All right, let's kick off this deep dive, and we're all about predictions this time. Specifically, Zach Reese versus Azamat Bekoev, middleweight bout. It's going down at UFC 311. So
Yeah.
we've really stacked up on the sources here. Detailed fight analysis from jkcp.com, fighter profiles, recent records. Oh, and of course those betting odds. Can't forget those.
Right, and looking at those odds right away, you can see the clash of styles right off the bat. Bekoev, he's the versatile grappler, the favorite across all the boards, sitting at -205. But then you got Reese, the powerful striker. He's a tempting underdog at +220.
Okay, so I think for those who aren't seasoned betting veterans, what does that actually tell us about how the experts kind of see this fight playing out?
Well, basically what those odds mean is that a $100 bet on Bekoev would net you about $49 in profit if he wins. But the same bet on Reese would bring in $220, so the higher payout. On Reese reflects that perceived risk. He's the underdog, but the odds suggest a chance of a big upset.
Interesting. So we've got potential for fireworks with Reese, but Bekoev is seen as the safer bet. Let's look at why that might be. Reese has an incredible finishing rate. 7 of his 9 wins have come by first-round stoppage. But I noticed something in his record, and I thought it might be a red flag in this matchup.
Absolutely, yeah. That loss to Cody Brundage, first-round knockout, kind of exposed a weakness, against strong grapplers. And Bekoev, he's got 18 wins, only 3 losses. He's shown he can win a variety of ways. Knockouts, submissions, decisions.
Yeah, that versatility makes him a real threat, especially against someone like Reese, who prefers to keep the fight standing. Speaking of which, Reese is the taller fighter. That's 6'3", with a reach of 77 inches. That's 5 inches longer than Bekoev.
Right, and that reach advantage is going to be key. To understanding the potential strategies here, Reese is going to want to use that jab to keep Bekoev at bay, land those powerful strikes he's known for. Bekoev, on the other hand, he's going to be looking to close the distance, clinch up, get this fight to the ground where he can, control Reese, exploit that grappling weakness.
It's almost like a classic, boxer versus wrestler scenario playing out in the octagon. We've got the tail of the tape, the stylistic matchup. But what about their recent performances? What kind of form are these guys bringing into UFC 311?
Well, Reese is riding a wave of momentum. He just submitted Eli Aronoff in the first round, adding to his, string of impressive finishes. It's clear he's dangerous early on.
But Bekoev has been grinding out wins too, right? His last 2 were decisions against Lucas Fernando and Dylan Butka. Tough opponents. Does that give us any clues about his approach to this fight?
It does. It does. Those recent decisions kind of suggest that Bekoev isn't afraid to go the distance. He's comfortable, in a long, drawn-out fight, which could be crucial if Reese can't get that early finish. So we're not just looking at who wins, but how they win.
Okay, this fight is already shaping up to be a nail-biter. But let's get to what everyone really wants to know. What is the expert prediction for how this is all going to play out?
The jkcp.com analysis predicts Bekoev will win by submission in round 2.
Wow, so they're seeing Bekoev weathering that early storm, surviving those power punches, getting Reese to the ground, and then ending it there.
Exactly, and it's a prediction that aligns with their strengths and weaknesses. But we can't forget about Reese's knockout power. It could change the game in an instant. If Bekoev isn't careful, one mistake could be the end.
That's what makes this so exciting. We have 2 very different paths to victory, both with, serious risks and rewards. We've got the expert prediction leaning towards Bekoev. But what are some other scenarios that could play out? Could Reese pull off the upset?
Absolutely, yeah. While the expert prediction favors Bekoev, there's always the chance Reese could land a knockout blow, especially early on. His power is undeniable.
So we're talking about a potential upset, which would mean big bucks for anyone who bet on Reese at those +220 odds. But what would that upset actually look like? How could Reese defy the odds and pull off a win?
Well, one scenario is that Reese utilizes his reach and footwork to perfection, keeps Bekoev at a distance and picks him apart with strikes. If he can avoid those takedowns and keep the fight standing, we could see a decision victory for Reese.
So a more tactical approach, using that 5-inch reach advantage to outpoint Bekoev. It's not his typical style, but it's definitely possible. Any other scenarios where Reese comes out on top?
Of course. We can't forget about that knockout power. If Bekoev gets over-aggressive trying to close the distance, Reese could catch him with a counterpunch, just like he did against previous opponent. One clean shot and it's all over.
Okay, so 2 distinct paths to victory for Reese, either outpointing Bekoev or landing a fight-ending blow. But even if he wins, it sounds like it's going to be a tough fight.
Definitely Bekoev is a seasoned veteran, and he's not going to make it easy for Reese. But that's what makes this matchup so exciting. It's a true clash of styles, and either fighter could win on any given night.
Okay, so we've got a solid grasp on the potential outcomes, but for those of us looking to make some educated guesses or maybe even place a few bets, what are the specific picks recommended by jkcp.com?
Well, they've got a few options for you. The first and perhaps the safest bet is Bekoev to win straight up. With odds at -205, it's a good choice for those who believe in his grappling dominance and overall skill set.
Makes sense. It aligns with their prediction of a Bekoev submission in round 2. What are the other picks?
They also recommend fight does not go the distance, with odds at -150. Considering both fighters have a tendency to finish fights early, this one has a good chance of hitting.
Especially since Reese's finishes tend to come in the first round. So for those who are expecting fireworks, that could be a good bet. What else?
For those feeling a bit bolder, they recommend Bekoev by submission at +150. It's based on his grappling prowess and Reese's vulnerability on the ground, as we've discussed.
I like it. A bit more risk, but a higher potential payout if it hits. Anything else for the risk takers out there?
They also suggest a couple of hedge bets for those who want to cover their bases. The first is Reese by KO/TKO at +220. It's a long shot, but the potential payout is huge if you believe in Reese's power.
So for those who are picturing a highlight reel knockout, this is the bet for you. And what's the final hedge bet?
The final recommendation is under 1.5 rounds at +100. This one is betting on an early finish regardless of who wins. Given their finishing rates, it's definitely not a bad bet.
I see the logic there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a range of picks to choose from the safer bets to the high-risk, high-reward options. And I know we can't give financial advice, but what stands out to you as the most likely scenario in this fight?
Personally, I'm leaning towards the expert prediction Bekoev by submission. His grappling seems like the key to victory here, and Reese hasn't shown the takedown defense to suggest he can consistently stop it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But as you said earlier, one punch from Reese could change everything. So even though Bekoev is the favorite, this fight is far from a foregone conclusion.
Exactly. There's always an element of unpredictability in MMA, and that's what keeps us coming back for more.
So for all of you listening, remember, these predictions are just a starting point. Dive deeper, watch their past fights, analyze their styles, and come to your own conclusions.
That's the beauty of this sport. We can analyze, debate, and make predictions, but ultimately it's up to the fighters to determine the outcome.
All right, so we've covered the picks, the predictions, and even some potential upset scenarios. But there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to explore. We've talked a lot about the physical matchup, but what about the mental game? How do you think these fighters are approaching this fight mentally?
That's a great question. The mental aspect of fighting is often overlooked, but it can be just as important as the physical preparation.
Exactly. I'm especially curious about Reese. He's facing a grappler who's favored to win, and he's coming off a loss that exposed his weakness on the ground. How do you think he's handling that pressure?
Well, Reese is known for his confidence and that aggressive fighting style. I imagine he's using that loss to Brundage as fuel for this fight. He'll be determined to prove he can handle a strong grappler.
So could that actually work in his favor? Could that, determination translate into a more focused and disciplined performance?
It certainly could. Fighters often perform at their best when they have something to prove. And let's not forget about the mental impact of Reese's size and reach.
Right. We talked about how Reese can use that reach to his advantage strategically. But could it also play a role, psychologically? Could Bekoev feel intimidated even if he has the grappling edge?
It's definitely a factor to consider. Stepping into the octagon with someone who's taller, has a longer reach, can be daunting. It could force Bekoev to fight more cautiously, which might play right into Reese's game plan.
It's fascinating how these subtle psychological factors can influence a fight. We've analyzed the physical matchup, the styles, the predictions, and now the mental game. So as we head into UFC 311, what's the key takeaway for you, the listener? What should you be thinking about when watching this fight unfold?
I think the key takeaway is this. Don't underestimate the power of the underdog. While Bekoev is the favorite and his grappling skills pose a real threat to Reese, one mistake, one well-placed punch can change everything in an instant.
And don't forget the mental aspect. Reese's determination to prove himself, combined with the potential intimidation factor of his size, could be the wild card in this fight.
Exactly. This is why we love MMA. It's a complex and unpredictable sport where any given fighter can win on any given night.
So as you watch this fight, keep all of these factors in mind. The clash of styles, the potential for an upset, and the psychological battle That'll be taking place inside the octagon.
Remember, the predictions are just a starting point. Watch the fight with a critical eye, form your own opinions, and enjoy the spectacle.
And who knows, maybe you'll spot something that the experts missed. That's the beauty of it all. The thrill of the unknown, the possibility of the upset, and the constant debate about who will come out on top. Enjoy the fight.